Welcome to Reading on Headlines, where I read the tarot on news headlines. This is a place where tarot meets progressive politics, and I offer insights on the mess that is politics and media. On today's episode, we're covering the pro-Palestinian protests that are happening, Biden's support for Israel, Mike Pence dropping out of the presidency candidacy, and the effect of Britney Spears' new book. So we're gonna dive right in because we have a lot to talk about. If you are watching the video stream, the video podcast, which you can watch either on Spotify or on YouTube, you will be able to see me sharing the screen and sharing the actual headline that I am reading on. So this is on Euronews. And the headline is Pro-Palestinian rallies in the UK and Europe call for peace in Gaza. And I have seen personally a lot of footage of people who are protesting, who are on the streets, who are saying no more. The genocide that is going on in Gaza is inhumane. It's absolutely terrifying. It is so incredibly sad to witness. And tens of thousands of people have joined pro-Palestinian rallies in the UK and Europe as Israel expands its response to the deadly Hamas attack of 7th of October. Then also, they come after a majority of nations voted on Friday for a United Nations resolution calling for a sustained humanitarian truce in Gaza. I know that a lot of countries are part of the UN. A lot of countries voted yes or no, or they were not present to vote, which I also think is a choice. I'm pretty sure I live in the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure the Netherlands did not attend, the Netherlands did not vote, which I am very much against. I very much think that the Netherlands should have been present and cast a vote to, yes, have a humanitarian truce, to have a ceasefire. And we're going to see how it all ends up. But what I wanted to take a look at for this week's reading on this topic is I want to take a look at how the pro-Palestinian protests are going to affect the genocide that is happening in Gaza right now. I want to know, I'm pretty sure I did a reading earlier on the podcast where I was looking at what can we do as people who are against the violence that is happening in Gaza right now. What can we do? And I'm pretty sure we looked at speaking up, speaking out, and we see a lot of people doing that. A lot of people are speaking out. A lot of people are making their voices heard and are amplifying Palestinian voices, which I think is amazing. So how will these pro-Palestinian protests affect the genocide in Gaza? The first card that I'm pulling here is the Ten of Swords, which is not a great card necessarily. However, I think here it represents the incredibly deep point where Gaza and all the attacks, where the war basically is at right now. I know it's even the words to describe what's going on is controversial because through the years it has been called a conflict, which I think really understates the heaviness of what is going on. You can describe it as a war because there are a lot of war things going on. But then again, it's a lot of, I'm not saying that it's completely one-sided, but for the most part, you can see that one side has more power. So how much of a war really is it? And then another word that I think accurately describes what is going on is genocide. And it sounds like a really heavy word, but that's because what is going on right now in Gaza is very heavy. And I think it's important to use the right words. Me, as someone who didn't really know much about what was going on, I really had to educate myself in the last couple of weeks about what is going on. I know a lot of people are with me on that. But besides all of that, I think it really shows here again with the Ten of Swords, it really shows what a deep point we're at right now in this conflict, war, at the point of genocide where we are. And I think I said it last week, like the world is watching, everybody is watching what is going on right now, and it's really terrifying to see that a lot of people are calling out against this genocide, and and there are still people who are finding excuses to say that what is going on right now is okay. We have the Five of Swords again. This is about a conflict. We see that it is so divided. We see a lot of people again speaking out against what Israel is doing. And again, I want to make really, really sure that I separate Israel and the Israeli government and the military from the Israeli people and Jews, especially because they're not the same and they're not standing necessarily on the same side. I have seen a lot of news articles about Jewish people standing up for Palestinians, saying that no more for anyone. The genocide that Jewish people went through here in Europe. Here in the Netherlands, we learn a lot about the Second World War, and it is terrifying to think about what they went through. And I'm not saying it's the exact same thing that's going on in Gaza right now, but it is genocide and it is terrible. And it's very comforting, I guess, to see that a lot of Jewish people are standing up for Palestinians, saying like no more. When we said no more, we meant no more for everyone. And I think it's really powerful to see that. But there's also a lot of people on the other side of that saying that it is all justified. So again, with the Five of Swords, we see a lot of polarization. We see a lot of things going. I almost get a sense with the Five of Swords of going behind people's back, and I'm not saying that about citizens. I'm not saying that about regular like people protesting. I'm saying this. I'm getting this feeling about the politicians. I'm getting this feeling of the politicians going behind closed doors, or I don't know, there seems to be something fishy going on when it comes to that. And I can't really quite put my finger on it, but there's something that feels very off about what's going on that we cannot see. And it also, again, this is about how the pro-Palestinian protests are affecting what is going on. Then we have the Hermit. This is about isolation, being alone, and I think a lot of Gazans, people living in Gaza, whether those are Palestinian or Israeli people or people from all around the world that found their way to Gaza, whether it was as a journalist or whatever it is. And they're literally isolated because it's called the largest open air prison for a reason, and people are feeling alone and desperate. And again, we're seeing that. We've been seeing it for a long time, but not a lot of people were watching, if that makes sense, the difference between that. And I think that I cannot imagine how lonely and how scary and how isolating it must be to be in Gaza right now. And I do think that the pro-Palestinian protests are giving the Palestinians a sense of being less lonely and being less alone and mostly being seen. And I think that is already a really big, important part of moving forward with hopefully, potentially ending the genocide that is going on. We have the world. This is so fucking sad, right? The world card is about cycles. I see it as cycles, as one thing ending and another thing beginning. And we can see it actually here in the world card. If I can show you, if you're watching the video version, you see this whole long snake that is at the end eating its own tail. So again, it's like cycles repeating itself. And we have seen this before when there were genocides happening or war crimes happening or just very inhumane things happening in the world, and people are protesting, but it feels like we're in this cycle where constantly something happens. We need to protest before politicians or people decide to do the right thing. And it can be so disheartening. It can be so tiring to constantly have to ask your politicians and demand your politicians to do the right fucking thing. And it's so disheartening and tiring. Like I said, it's exhausting. Um, let's see what else we can see. I want to take a look at if the West will finally do something and interfere with Israel's current actions. Can we see if the West is finally going to do something? We looked a little bit at the UN voting, but we don't really know how much that is going to interfere. So we have the Page of Pentacles, which is interesting energy here because it's new. It's something that hasn't necessarily been done before in a material way. So we know that a lot of weapons and a lot of materials are being shipped to, I don't know, given, I guess, to Israel to support them in this war. And maybe there's something that we haven't seen before material wise that is going to happen. So this could be that potentially some Western countries are going to stop giving weapons to Israel because they demand a ceasefire, because they're not agreeing with how the Israeli government is handling this quote unquote conflict. So there might be something that we not necessarily have seen before that is going to happen when it comes to the West doing something material. It's interesting. It can also be with the Suit of Pentacles, be about the politicians themselves, people working. So again, politicians themselves speaking out in a way that hasn't really been done before. So it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of manifests itself. Then we have the Ten of Pentacles, which again, I think is going to be really interesting to see that play out. We see pentacles again, so materials. I am very interested in how this is going to manifest. I'm going to ask for a clarifier card on the Ten of Pentacles and what that means. We have the Two of Cups. So this almost, I'm not necessarily thinking this is what this means, but it almost looks as if it's like, okay, Two of Cups, there are two sides here that are in conflict, again, quote unquote here. With the Ten of Pentacles, it feels like doing the most materially in a material way. So it almost feels like they're gonna, the West, and with the West, I'm being very broad here. This could be the US, this could be collaborations of countries within Europe or a combination of the two. What I mean with that is that I feel like they're going to interfere with both of them, not just Israel. And this could look in that there are weapons being given to Gaza as well as Israel, or I'm not really sure how this is going to manifest. I think this is very interesting energies. I am given the feeling of really wanting to work towards peace, really having the long-term goal of peace, which with the Ten of Pentacles, I often see it as a long-term goal after generations. And then we have the Two of Cups, which is um, solidarity, I guess. It's a connection between two. So I feel like they really want to work towards peace. And I do think that the West, if they feel like with Israel's current actions, peace is not gonna be able to happen unless they kill all Palestinians, and there's no more other people to make peace with, which is a very dark thought. And I'm also not seeing that happen here. I'm seeing here with the Two of Cups is a very clear card of a connection between two people or two groups, two kinds of people. It's a connection and a sort of peace. So I do see that happening, the West interfering. Absolutely, I do. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, our community. If you're looking for a community of like minded tarot enthusiasts, I invite you to our free Discord server. We chat about tarot, witchcraft, politics, our hobbies, media, and more. Click the link in the show notes to join the Discord server for free. Okay, next, we're gonna not necessarily move on from this topic, but we're gonna look at it from a different angle because we've all seen, or I have seen, at least I shouldn't fill it in for everybody. We've seen that Biden shows a lot of support for Israel. And I don't necessarily want to go very deep into why Biden is supporting Israel this strongly and why he seems to be eating up all the lies of the, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce that, but like the leader of Israel, I guess. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. But what I do want to look at is how Biden's support for Israel will affect his chance for re-election, because there are a lot of people in his party, a lot of voters, Democratic voters, that are not pro-Israel, that are pro-Palestinian, that are pro-peace, pro-ceasefire, and yeah, here you can see half of young Americans are skeptical of US support for Israel, and campus protesters demand a ceasefire in Gaza. So, again, I'm very interested in seeing how this is gonna affect his chance for re-election. And the scary thing is, like, there are like 1,000 candidates for the Republican Party presidency candidacy. Um, but there doesn't really seem to be much much competition for Biden. It's like Biden is the best that they've got right now, which is scary because he looks like who could move on to the spirit realm, so to speak, at any second. Anyway, that's a conversation for another day. How will Biden's support for Israel affect his chance for re-election? We have the Six of Swords. I honestly think he will sort of pull through this. I'm not sure when the elections are. I think it's next year. Pretty sure it's next year. So I almost feel like this. He feels like this is gonna blow over. He knows that not everyone in his party is agreeing with him, and he feels like it sort of will blow over. And with the Six of Swords, it's about transition. So that either means like it will blow over, or it means that there is a need for transition in the Democratic Party, which I think a lot of Democrats agree with, especially the more left-leaning Democrats very much agree that it's time for new faces, new people in the Democratic Party. Let's take a look at what else can I see about this. Um, Queen of Wands. This could literally mean new leadership. With the transition here, new leadership, maybe a female or someone who is very strong, warm, inviting energy. Doesn't necessarily have to be feminine energy, but very warm, inviting, caring energy, very charismatic. We have a Queen of Wands here, which is the suit of wands, suit of fire, which means very passionate about what they're doing and have the ability to charismatically draw people in and show them that they care about the country, that they care about the people in the country most of all. So it could be that Biden's support for Israel, if he keeps it up and he's not gonna like back down from this, after all of the pro-Palestinian protests that we're seeing, we're also seeing them in the US as well. We've seen a lot of sit-ins at, I don't know if it's like public buildings. We've seen a lot of sit-ins in stations as well. And I feel like if Biden doesn't like stop his openly support on Israel, if he doesn't sort of back down from it, I really get the feeling that someone else is gonna make use of this opportunity and sort of give the Democratic Party what it wants. Like there might be someone under the surface or someone who is gonna sort of pop up and what comes to mind is like showing Biden how it's done, like how it should be done. But it gives off very strong, powerful energy. So I'm almost feeling like if Biden doesn't change his ways right now, that there could be some competition. And I'm not necessarily thinking, I don't know if that is going to be positive for the Democratic Party in the elections. Like, I think within the Democratic Party, it might be important and supportive, and the idea that the Democratic Party is maybe more left leaning, or just that it's going to go into a different direction. But that doesn't necessarily have to mean good things for the Democratic Party when it comes to the election in 2024, depending on who is going to run for president at the Republican end. I hope that that makes sense. Overall, I want to take a look at the Democratic Party energy here. We have the Hierophant. Things are more traditional, and I think people are looking for more change. I think it's very, very much a duality. It's very polarizing, you know. There are, what do you call it, more conservative leaning Democrats, and there are more progressive leaning Democrats. And that is always a polarization that you're going to have. You have the same polarization in the Republican Party as well. There are more progressive Republicans, there are more conservative Republicans. Let's take a look what else we have. Infighting, 5 of Wands. I mean, that's to be expected in any political party, right? Some infighting, some conflict, some fights. It's gonna, we're seeing this with the 5 of Wands. Again, fire, the passion, people really caring about this and really being fired up about this. We have the 10 of Wands. Um, this could be that it is a very heavy burden for Biden, which sounds weird, to carry, and a very heavy burden on the Democratic Party itself, that it is carrying a lot right now. It's trying to be a lot of different things, but nothing seems to be satisfying everybody in there, in with like Democratic voters. That makes sense. That makes sense, right? Like, it doesn't seem to satisfy all Democratic voters, and you can't, because not all Democratic voters are the same. That's the whole fucking issue with a two-party political system, that there is too much diversity, that there's too much of a difference, I should say, within opinion of political policies within one political party. One more card for the Democratic Party energy, and then we're going to move on. We have the 9 of Swords. Yeah, a lot of issues, a lot of thought and policy issues, a lot of anxieties, a lot of worries, a lot of potential problems on the horizon. We gotta love that. It's going to be very interesting how this is going to play out. It feels very troubling. It feels not necessarily troubling for the election next year, but within the Democratic Party, it feels like very uneasy energy, very chaotic energy, like unruly, if you will. So again, we gotta love that. Next, we're gonna go to the other, the party two in the two-party political system in the U.S. We're gonna take a look at the at the Republican Party, because what we saw, this headline is Mike Pence, former U.S. Vice President, withdraws from 2024 presidential race. And he said, "This is not my time." He made the announcement on Saturday. We always knew this would be an uphill battle, but I have no regrets. And he struggled mostly because he lost a lot of support of many Republican voters when he publicly broke with Mr. Trump over the January 6th Capitol riot in 2021. And yeah, Trump wasn't very nice about Pence, which, you know, in his resignation, Mr. Pence did not endorse any other Republican candidates for the presidential election. Yeah, probably because a lot of them are idiots. Anyway, let's take a look at, do a little bit of an update on the Republican Party energy, on the candidates, how it's going. So a little bit on the Republican Party energy. Let's take a look there. We just left off with Democrats. Oh, great. We have the 10 of Swords. It's a shit show there as well. It's a shit show there as well. The 10 of Swords is, again, a deep point. It's, people don't know what to think. People don't know what to vote for. There are right now a lot of options, and they're not really sure how they're gonna. They feel like they're almost gonna be like, are being like led astray, is what I'm feeling. where they don't know who to vote for. They don't know who is the good guy or the bad guy, and who's talking shit and who to trust. And a lot of what we see happening a lot within politics in general, and I see it a lot on the right. I see it here in the Netherlands as well on the extreme right. What we see is that a lot of lies, a lot of bullshit is being spouted, is being said, and people are just eating it up because, I don't know, because they don't have the capacity to fact check. They don't have the capacity to go outside of their echo chamber. They don't want to do any fact checking or go outside of their echo chamber because it what is being said is exactly like validating their own thoughts. But on the other hand, you also have the people who don't agree with a lot of, for instance, the anti-trans bullshit that is being spouted right now. There are a lot of Republicans who just don't give a shit, who are like, you can live your life any way you want to. I don't care. They're often very much about you do whatever you want. Just don't busy me with it. Just don't trouble me with it. And you can be whoever you want to be. I think a lot of Republicans are like that because they're very, I think Republicans and more right wing leaning people and voters are very much about the individualistic approach and very about me and I don't necessarily want to say egotistical, but if I do say that, I don't mean it in a negative way necessarily, but in a very me centered way. And and like the DeSantis campaign is all about being anti-trans, being anti-gay, and I just don't think that it's necessarily hitting with a lot of Republican voters. So I think that is what we're seeing with the Ten of Swords. I also have the Moon. Like, people don't know what to think. People don't know what to vote. The Moon, we see that as something hidden, as things that we just don't know, being in the dark. And you can also say something about shadow, maybe. It's bringing out the darker parts in people. And that sounds really dark. And it sounds also a little bit cryptic, I guess. But it's bringing out the negative parts of people. And we saw this all. I'm saying I because this is my podcast. These are my words. You can disagree if you want to. But I think a lot of people would agree with me, and it has been said before, that when Trump got elected, it brought out the worst in a lot of people because him being elected validated for a lot of people that, oh, he can say all of this awful shit, then I also can say all of this awful shit out loud. And it emboldened people to be more racist and to say more shit and to be more outrageous and to be more intolerant. And that emboldened a lot of people. So Trump becoming president was a really low point, and it brought out the dark in a lot of people. And if the wrong person gets to run for president in 2024, we're probably gonna see that happening again. And we've already have been seeing it since Trump got elected. We've been seeing it abroad as well because the US is always being watched a lot, and there are countries like here in the Netherlands. There's also still a party that is very like Trump wannabe. I call him like the Trump wannabe, where he also felt emboldened, like, oh, if Trump can say it in his country, then maybe I can make it big in my country with similar ideas as well, which is terrifying. Then we have the Chariots. They're just going to move along. They're not necessarily going to address the problems. They're just going to move on. They are very motivated about what they do believe in, and they want to push through. So I think they're just going to move forward within the Republican Party. Let's take a look at Donald Trump, especially. I think last time we looked at the lawsuits. Right now, I want to look at the presidency campaign of Donald Trump. How is that going? We have the star. He's still very hopeful. He's still very hopeful. Then we have justice. Yeah, does that makes sense, right? The justice card. Every action has a reaction, is what I always say with the justice card, but also like literal justice. That he's going through a lot of court cases right now. There's something, not necessarily there's something new every day, but there is a lot going on. I'm pretty sure he still has the sexual harassment cases going on, cases of fraud. There's still the case of having the fucking classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, which I'm not sure if it's his house, but like at his house. And I think he's hopeful, but I also think he's a bit naive. You know, he has a lot of yes men around him, and they're just saying whatever Donald Trump wants to hear, and he's eating it up because he has become such a person within the Republican Party to look up to I don't know, to admire, and people are not gonna go against him. People are overall not gonna argue with him, and they're going to be his yes men. And that is, I think, what we're seeing. And I think that is why he is very hopeful. But just because he has a lot of people around him that are yes men, and sure, there are still Trump voters, Trump enthusiasts, if you will, within the Republican voter base, I also think a lot of Republicans are kind of done with Trump. And I think that he has a lot of hopeful thinking, but I don't think it's necessarily based on fact. It's based on the political people, the political yes men people that he has around him. So I think that his actions are going to have a reaction in his potential like candidacy campaign. So that's what I'm feeling here for Trump. Now, the last topic that I want to take a look at is a little bit more light-hearted. But before we get into that, I want to do a little social media shout out. And for this week, the social media shout out is a comment on my reel. I did a reel on Instagram on like a little trailer of last week's episode. I want to do these trailers every time now because I think they're really fun to do, and it sort of shows what this episode is all about. And I want to thank you, Tarot for Self Help, for saying, okay, I love it. Same. I love doing this. I love doing the political tarot readings. And it's not just political, you know, we're going to talk about media, but a lot. The thing is, I feel like anything that you can disagree on can be made political, and pretty much has been made political. So, what we're going to look at next is a headline on Britney Spears' new book. I still have to read it. I still have to buy it. Actually, I want to get a paperback version because I love paperback, but the English version is only available in ebook or hardcover. And I want to get the paperback, but that one is only is only available in the Dutch translation for me to read. So I don't know if I want to read the translated version, you know? Anyway, Britney Spears' biggest The Woman in Me revelations. From the film role she regrets turning down to her relationship with her sister, Jamie Lynn. So we're not going to read all of this, but this is like her tell all book, her memoir, and she writes about her journey through pop stardom, her highly publicized conservative battle, without skimping on the details. And I think there's a lot of controversy about Britney Spears and the type of content that she's posting online now. Personally, I am of the opinion that she can do whatever the fuck she wants to. She has been under the conservatorship for years and years, not being able to post whatever she wants to. And also, I think part of it has to do with ageism, with because she's older now and people don't like to look at older women as much as they do as looking at younger women. And I think her having ownership over her own body and showing that she's comfortable within her own body, that she can dance sexually or sensually or in however fucking way she wants to. And people don't like that. But what I want to look at specifically when it comes to this book release is there's going to be a lot of information that is already out there on what Britney wrote in her book, how she was treated, everything. And what I want to take a look at is what will we learn from how we treated celebrities, mainly women, in the early 2000s, and honestly, how they're still being treated. And I want to take a look at if from this book or in general from the Britney Spears experience, everything that she had to go through and everything that we saw her go through, especially again in the early 2000s, everything she went through, but also now that we're getting to see a different side of the story, how are we going to learn from this as a society, media outlets? How are we going to learn from how Britney Spears and women and celebrities were treated? Three of Swords. This is old pain coming up. So again, I think this talks about the old pain that Britney Spears went through, that she now finally has a voice to be open about, to tell the world. And I think it's going to hurt a lot of people. Here we have Nine of Wands, resilience. I think that if we keep being open about these stories, and if other women, if other people tell their stories as well, whether it is in a memoir or, I don't know, in a fucking podcast or whatever it is, in an interview, I think that women are way stronger than some people might give us all credit for. And I think that what we learn, what we will learn, what we see here in the Nine of Wands card, right? Again, if you're watching the video episode, we see this stick being tied to a broken bone. So, yeah, we've learned from it, but that doesn't erase the pain, the years and decades of pain that women have had to go through to get where we are right now. And we're still not in the place where we deserve to be. You know, I'm very much a feminist. I'm very much about equality. I'm not necessarily man bashing. I like to make man bashing jokes, but um, only because for the longest time women were the butt of the joke. So I just dropped a lot of cards, so I'm trying to put them back. But what I also pulled here, what came up, was the Three of Wands. And the Three of Wands is a card of moving forward. So, you know, the feminist movement is going on right now. It has been going on for a long while, and it's not gonna stop. And I do think that we're gonna see progression, but there will always be fallbacks, and there will always be instances where we will see women being treated badly, whether that is in with celebrities, in media, or in politics. You know, a lot of female politicians are not taken as seriously. Here in Netherlands, we've had a lot of male prime ministers, but we never had a female prime minister. Right now, we have a lot of women leading political parties, so there is quite a big chance that we're going to get a female prime minister. Our elections are in November, so I'm definitely going to do a whole episode, or a large portion of an episode, discussing and sharing my views on the Dutch political system and political parties, and doing a reading on the election, because I think that's going to be interesting. And I would love to do that about other countries as well, but I just don't really have the information. I don't really have the knowledge to do that about, for instance, Germany or France or Spain. I don't have the knowledge. So if anyone is watching and from another country where you're going to have elections soon, and you, I don't know, want to be interviewed, you want to have a chat about your country's politics, I would love it if you could reach out to me. You can reach out to me through mail at readingonheadlines.com, or you can shoot me a DM on Tarot with Ruby. Anyway, back to the Britney Spears reading. What will we learn from how we treated celebrities, mainly women? Oh, we have the Page of Pentacles again. This feels like new opportunities, but also still treating women as less than, as if we have less experience, as if we are less valuable. I do see opportunities happening within the workplace specifically. I do see opportunities happening, but also still not enough. There's still no actual equality between men and women. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be a while before we're going to see the equality that feminists want to see, which sucks, but that is life, I guess. So share your thoughts on today's episode in the Q&A section on Spotify, or comment on one of my podcast posts on Instagram to get featured in next week's episode. And I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode. I had a lot of fun pulling the cards again. Stay safe, stay sane, and do some self-care today. Bye.